I'm going to talk about the beginning astronaut program. Most people think NASA started all of it, but it was in the Air Force. And it was kind of an exciting time. It was after World War II, and we had some of the German scientists that we captured. Operation Paperclip. Soviet Union got some, Israel got some, China got some, and we got some. Well, where I was stationed in San Antonio at the School of Aerospace Medicine, which was an Air Force base at the time, we had two German scientists, Hans Klaumann and Sidney Leverett. Hans Klaumann sent the 3 mice into space to just see what would happen, and then the monkey, and they made it fine. So we continued with that. There were 6 of us that were kind of waiting for another school to come about, but we were designated as scientific aides to those German scientists. We did the physiological training and testing for the first group of astronauts. You have to realize that they're not heroes now. This is just starting a program. And in that group, there was some heroes. We lost John Glenn 2 years ago, and he was our first American to go around the Earth. He went around twice. The Soviet Union had already sent a man, Yuri Gagarin. He was the first man. He made the deal. The Soviet Union lost a man in space. At Brooks, we had telemetry station, and we had everybody on it all the time, and we knew when the Russians lost their first man. Their second man was Yuri Gagarin, and any losses and stuff that happened along this line, they kept it secret because they did not want the publicity to be negative, because there was already a lot of negative publicity anyway. Our guy did well. John Glenn was our second man in space. We had one other guy that made a short hop in the Mercury capsule. And this was the Mercury program that was started there. Now, on physiological testing, these guys, there were certain criteria. All of these guys had to be jet pilots. All of them had to be 5'11" or under. All of them had to be a genius. They all had to be in good physical condition. And all of these guys, out of about 40, this is the last, down to the last 7, and they're the ones that we picked. Physiological testing at Brooks, we had to do EKGs, blood pressures, breathing rates, and running 2 or 3 miles every day. But anyway, these are the guys that were picked last out of 40 some people. And some of them you might know, but John Glenn is right over here, and he was the last of the astronauts of the original that made it, and he passed away about 2 years ago, I believe. I think we had a couple of other things. You hear people talk about 0G and G forces. 0G, we're at 1G right now. This is what we weigh. 0G is when we're in a situation where we don't weigh anything. G forces is some way to make us weigh more. And we had to do testing at 0G, 1G where we're at, up to 3.5 Gs. Okay, at Brooks we had a human centrifuge, and it was enough for us to create G-forces. Creating the G-forces changes your heart rate, your blood pressure. We collected parotid fluid. It's corticosteroid to see anything that might be happening. A lot of the people that were applying washed out on those deals. It was all new. We had some German technicians here. We had our 2 German scientists. But you know, when you go to the doctor now and they take an EKG or blood pressure, they got all the stuff they need. We didn't have any of that. So it had to be made there, and their technicians and our technicians made it. If we can go on just a little bit, this was a disaster area for us. We were making this. This was a 10-foot spherical ball that we could create 3 different dimensions: horizontal, left, and up. Well, we just got through with this one. We're getting ready to close the hatch. 100% pure oxygen inside, and a lot of our electronic stuff. Closed the gate, moved the thing back, turned it on, it blew up. If anybody had been inside, they'd have been killed on that one. If we could go to the next one.
Was that your picture, Buck?
That's mine. I had a lot more.
We gotta go.
Yeah. Hey, cool it. And these are operators. We had 6 guys that they brought in that were waiting for different schools. And this is our favorite operator, Merle Cardone. He's from New Orleans, and this is one of the physicians that was there. He's getting ready to run the human centrifuge. Okay. This is one of the volunteers. We had the we started with these kind of electrodes there, trying to match what we used to do in the hospital, and it wasn't working out. So Ben, we're measuring his oxygen, and we do have an EKG monitor here and a blood pressure monitor over there. Next one. And this was what it was whenever we're all lined up. We have sternal leads, and that gets our heart rate, and with the rise and fall of the chest, it gets breathing rate too. And okay, if we go in the human centrifuge, just like the rockets that blast off, everybody's on their back. Nobody's sitting or standing because the G-forces would be too much. And so I'm in a chair here. My sternal leads are on microphone, and we're getting ready to make a run. So go ahead. That's at 3 G's right there, and that's how much it pulled you down. And one little thing here, people don't know when they faint or when they pass out what's really happening. And in the center of our brain, at the stella turcica, I'll use that, there's a crossover where blood pools, and then there's a distance about 1 centimeter between that and your eyeballs. If you spin somebody around enough, that goes down, and finally you black out, and that's your faint. So we have a testing in here, and right after I'll be testing here, the next one, and there's our human centrifuge. Here's the capsule over here. That thing, and you can see the operation is up here. That thing, when it start getting up toward 3 G's, it shakes the whole building. It's really a moving. And here's Merle. He's laying down, and he's getting ready to make a run. And if I'm not in the picture, I'm taking it. And if I'm in the picture, Merle's taking it. We had 6 of us to do this. This is a program here, one of the physicians here, and he's got his hands on that thing. On the board, it gives us a light, red, yellow, green, and stuff. That's the question. And we have to match, we have to answer that question by giving the same colors back. If we can't, then they shut the centrifuge down. Okay. There's Merrill. He's quite a talented person, and he's on the nose cone of the centrifuge, and that's how big it was. This is my favorite picture of the whole thing. I guard it. That one of our physicians here, one of our technicians here, that's John Glenn. He's getting ready to make a run in the centrifuge. And John was, he was a Marine pilot. And he never took anybody's word for anything. If the technicians say, okay, we're going to do this and this is going to happen, John never believed them. He figured it out himself. And probably was the reason he made it all the way through and just passed away last year. He was the last of the originals. And a good guy, good shape. He was barely able to make it on the 511. So anyway, next. These are the guys that we had our scientists there, technicians there. I'm back over here, kind of big ears. This is one of our physicians here and a scientist. This was just before a tragedy. President Kennedy, Miss Kennedy, Johnson, and Connolly all came to pay respects to the work that had been done at the Air Force Base. We had all of the big space chambers, altitude chambers and stuff at this spot. And you see some of them holding awards there. That was the last award that President Kennedy gave, Outstanding Unit Citation, and all of us got that. The next morning over at Dallas, he was assassinated. So this is just before that all happened. Okay, and we had 3 aircraft that we could use for our research, and these are F-100s by North American, and they were built specially for us there. I'll explain just a minute. In the airplane, we had to do it different to get G-forces, and so we would fly a horizontal pattern and then we'd go into a dive. We'd get into that dive and probably about 20,000 feet, we'd pull up. And when we'd pull up, it would just be a float. Just float. And we could get 35 seconds to 0 G floating that F-100. And it would go over the top and we'd pull back out. When we pull back out, we'd be up at 3 Gs again. So we can get our measurements for EKG, for blood pressure, for parotid, and the things that we needed. And then we'd take all of that results down to a man that used to be around here, Ira Shannon. He was a dentist and was a biologist. He did all the water studies out here for us. He was the man that developed fluoride toothpaste and fluoride mouthwash. And he was our chemist, and he did all the chemistry stuff there. And a very good person. Since it was kind of a new program, every time they had an air show somewhere, we had to go. And they were painted up pretty good, and people, it kind of did the publicity for us. And we had 3 of these F-100s. We crashed one of them. And we did rolls and the things that we do to create the 0 G and the G forces. And I'm taking these pictures here, Meryl's on the other, okay? This is down around San Antonio over the Hondo that we took these pictures here. And we're flying formation, and that's one of those things that your wings are about 18 inches apart whenever you're doing that. These pilots were all fighter pilots that just got out of either Korea or just come back home from Vietnam and stuff. They were extremely good pilots, even though we crashed one. Okay. I think this was a school, and they created this school here just for the research that we had. And we had the aircraft, and we had the human centrifuge, and we had probably 50 or 60 physicians doing the studies with the chemistries, the EKGs and stuff. One of them that did not get in here because it involved myself, we had a 12-hour tilt table. And the next morning when they come in, we had a lot of physicians, and they had me wired up and stuff. When they put me up, my heart stopped for 21 seconds. Well, we couldn't afford, we could afford it, us to have something happen, but we couldn't afford the astronauts. So we never did let them do the tilt tables. They did the human centrifuge in the airplanes and stuff like that. Very good people, very talented people. I'd never been around people that everybody was a genius. But boy, they could think up more things to do than you can count. Every day of working day, we had a 6-mile run. And a person that you might have heard about back in the earlier years by the name of Dave Cooper, he wrote the journals on aerobics that you hear about him, and Jim Ryan was a friend of his from the University of Kansas, and they wrote that book. When Dave got out, he started a clinic in Dallas, a rehab clinic for people to, and he used running the aerobics to improve them. I think that's kind of all I got. One other thing, when I left Eastern, I was a graduate engineer, and they needed engineers, and I went there and waiting for school. They assigned me to the German scientists, and they were good. You think, well, coming out of Germany or coming out of Russia, they're going to be something that they don't like over here. These guys were great, and they worked hard. Colonel Strapp, the sled man that you hear about that rode the sled and stopped so quick, he was in our group. There was the guy that broke the sound barrier. Yes, he was in our group, and he was stationed out at Edwards, out in Nevada, and he was kind of a rebel. But he was good. They dropped him out of the belly of a B-52 in a V-2 rocket, and that takes a lot of courage. Anyway, he broke the sound barrier, and everybody that worked with North American, if they broke the sound barrier, they got a little medal. All right, this was supposed to be a meeting that you guys could do your own input. If you got any questions or any comments, we'll go for it.